We acknowledge that Coquitlam is located on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation, who continue to care for these lands, waters, and all living things. Welcome to the Face to Face. I'm your host, Genevieve Kyle Lefebvre. Face to Face is a bilingual series of video recorded here in Coquitlam. Today we are with Benjamin Perry, volunteer organizer for Force of Nature Alliance Tri-City team. So welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Can I say Ben?
Yes, you may. Yep,
you may.
Thank you.
So talk to us a little bit about what is it actually Forces of Nature Alliance?
So Force of Nature Alliance, I joined shortly after it started in 2015. And we do community organizing for climate change, which I think means, well, back in 2015, people were starting to become aware again of the climate crisis. Not that it hasn't been known about for 150 years or something, but, and the climate movement needed a way to organize people and mobilize them to make change. So Force of Nature, what we do is reach out to the public who want to do something about climate change but aren't sure, maybe don't know what to do, and we give them some way to make a difference.
Okay, so how is the organization works? Do you do town hall or meetup or what's happening?
Yeah, so we have actually a pretty big network of supporters in Tri-Cities, people who are keen on climate change, and we get in contact with them through email, through our website, social media, let them know what the government's doing and what we're trying to get the government to do, and other sorts of initiatives. We've also had, over the past 2 years, a number of events at the library with films and speakers related to climate change. And we're also engaging with politicians during election time to collect their positions on climate policy too, and communicate that with the public.
Okay, yep. So with the last election, did you get involved within the election, different people, because they were sharing your views?
Yeah, so the biggest contribution we did in the last election was right at the beginning of the election period. We co-hosted a town hall on climate and environment. And that was along with some other environmental orgs, including Wonders Tree Fellowship, West Coast Environmental Law, and Burke Mountain Naturalists.
Okay, excellent. I actually know the Burke Mountain Naturalist group. And tell me what happened that day. Tell me.
Well, I should say another group that we were with was a group called Laudato Si Circle, which is a Catholic activist group. And they were able to help us get access to a wonderful building at the Catholic Church just off Johnson Street in Coquitlam. And we had about 150 people in a hall with a capacity, I think, for 200. We had attendance from the two ridings, the two main ridings in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody Coquitlam, including the Green Party, NDP Party, and Liberal Party candidates.
Okay, so it was very well represented.
It was, yeah, and it was a lively debate. This is the second time I've been involved in organizing a town hall, and I thought we did a good job of keeping it structured, but also allowing for some freedom for the audience to say what they wanted, ask what they wanted, and elicit responses. So it did get a little bit heated at times, and I thought it was good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I do think it's important. I've been to town hall when there's not a lot of time to talk, another one and you actually can share and talk and have dialogue about it. And I gotta say, when you have time to share and talk, that is the one usually that makes most of a difference, because you can ask your own question if you don't understand certain things. I did see not that long ago an interview with you on the dispatch, right?
Zero carbon step code.
Yeah.
Okay. So zero carbon step code's been something we've been working on, it must be 2 years or longer now. locally, and Force of Nature is a regional organization, so we've been working on it across the Lower Mainland, along with some other groups. So
what does that mean, zero carbon and all that stuff? Give us some details. What does that mean?
I will.
Okay.
Sorry, maybe I'm being long-winded.
No, no problem.
The province came up with this great framework where cities can create a code for new buildings. It's not old buildings, it's any new buildings, to make sure that they don't produce greenhouse gases, carbon emissions. And so it has 4 different levels. We're right now mandated across the province to be at level 1, which is reporting and detecting emissions only, like reporting emissions. But we're pushing to get all municipalities in the Lower Mainland and locally, right now Coquitlam, to adopt it at level 3 or 4, which are essentially buildings that don't produce carbon emissions. The heating systems and the hot water systems won't produce, they'll be electric, high efficiency heat pump systems most likely. So that's what we're trying to do. I should say Port Moody has already done it, and they were ahead of this provincial legislation on it.
Okay.
Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, New Westminster, North Van, Maple Ridge, Langley. Coquitlam seems to be falling behind. I think there's been some trouble coming around to implementing it at City Hall this time. So it's been a long, hard campaign to get Coquitlam to adopt this policy.
So that's the idea.
Yes,
get them to be on board.
Yeah, and then what that would mean is every new building would be zero emissions coming out of it, at least for the heating and hot water systems.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's where most of the carbon comes out of.
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the carbon in Canada comes from cities, and most of the carbon emissions in cities come from, number 1 source is transportation, number 2 is buildings, heat and hot water. Yeah.
I understand, yeah. So now tell me, what's the impact of the Alliance Force of Nature on the Tri-City?
Yeah, good question. Well, I mean, I think we started Force of Nature Alliance in 2015, was working on federal issues like pipelines. And when we were knocking on doors and talking to people about climate change, people often talked about what cities can do. So we started to really focus on cities. I can list a few highlights of what we've done. Is we've gotten the city of Port Moody and the city of Coquitlam to have a climate action plan. City of Coquitlam is still in draft. Again, they're kind of a little bit slow on the climate stuff. We also did a survey, I think in 2019 we published it, and it was a survey across the Tri-Cities about active transportation.
Okay.
And that was about, if you're not going to use your car, what does that look like for you, for the average resident? We had this survey, and we had some nice scholars from university who were part of our team produce this report. And it showed that people wanted more bike lanes, more walking lanes, better signage, better intersections, so that they'd feel safer and easier for them to get around without a car. And so we delivered that report to the cities and made presentations to them and stuff. Okay,
beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, here we're on top of Brick Mountain, right?
Yes.
So I always explore, do I really need my car? You have to walk to a little bit down to be able to get on the bus, or I can take my bike, but if I don't have an electric bike, it's quite of a hike to like bike up all the way up here. So why I'm saying this, that it depends where people live and how accessible to have the alternative. Because for me, I feel, especially if I have little kids, it's almost impossible.
That's 100%. You're right. My neighborhood, I live down by Town Center Park. I know of a couple of families that live on bikes, and they have kids, and they live in detached homes. They have cargo bikes, electric bikes, and they don't have a car. And that works down there. I understand up here it would be different. I think it's a matter of, if we look at how do we prevent the harms caused by a car-oriented lifestyle, we're going to add 50,000 people to the Coquitlam Center area with these giant towers over the next decade or two. If everybody's driving a car, there's going to be traffic problems. we're going to have to produce way more parking. When we get that dense, it makes sense to have bicycle and walking infrastructure.
I can see how that will very make a difference to keep our planet green if we use less our car. I gotta say though, personally, I have thought about I used to work in North Vancouver. And when I decided to work locally, to change that, this is me not going to work every day, one less person on the road, but I did think about it. So how, of course it's gonna cost me less money, but also it's minimizing my footprint. Yep. And if everybody start thinking like this, work closer. I mean, I know a lot of people are going back to work right now, right? Yeah. There was a lot of people working remotely, because you did mention number one is transportation.
That's
right.
Yep.
So I'm thinking about transportation. If every single person think about how they can make this gap smaller, that makes a huge difference. If everybody does it.
Right. Yeah.
Is it something you guys talk about on how can people actually can make this gap smaller, or it's an idea I'm giving you?
You mean to make the gap of
using less your car, let's say, for the basically carbon print, right?
Yeah, I think it is. When we started looking at cities, one of our big, we had 5 key campaign points, and one of them was low carbon transportation systems. I mean, the most efficient, lowest carbon is a bicycle. Not everyone can ride a bicycle. Some people need cars, but I think that we're looking, and electric cars are better for the environment. But yeah, definitely we did the active transportation campaign. We've continued to support and give input on the city's transportation campaigns. And once we finish the zero carbon step code, maybe the next will be transportation.
Maybe.
I still drive a car, but last summer for 3 months, I commute 45 minutes into the valley to Abbotsford.
Okay.
3 months, I took bicycle and transit to and from work. And
was it much longer?
It was.
You were going to say that.
It took an extra 45 minutes, but when I looked at it maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it was even longer. So it's getting better. There's a direct bus from Lougheed Mall to Abbotsford, and then I could bike 10 minutes to my office. So it was, and the benefit for me is driving through traffic takes energy, focus, time. It's stressful. It's boring. And when I'm riding on the bus, I can read a book, and I can get on my bike and have a little bit of exercise and get to the office.
So doing both of them, it's a good combination. And of course, the summer is...
Yeah, it was better in the summer.
It's a little bit easier, definitely.
Yeah.
So tell me, Ben, what is the main challenges that the Alliance has faced throughout the years?
Well, I think there are kind of 2 big challenges that we tend to face. And I'd say one is hesitant politicians. I think that there are people, we've done a lot with City Hall. There are people at City Hall who are hesitant to take action because they don't want to face potential consequences. It's safer to do things that people are used to doing. And making change is something that puts you at risk for criticism by the public. I think the other challenge that we've faced is this is going to be a long, hard process, climate action. It's been going on for a long time. People have been working on it for a long time. And people will work on it and get tired of it. And it's hard to sustain a movement. It's really hard. If you think about, we had this moment with the big demonstrations worldwide and Greta Thunberg and all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of dissipated as we went into COVID, and then we went into economic crisis, and then we have problems with Donald Trump and all these things. It's easy to forget and move on to other parties. Quite frankly, buying eggs has been a struggle lately, right?
Especially in the States.
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Yeah. So I think that those are the 2. I think politicians who are, trepidatious about making change, and just life is hard, and it's hard to sustain this long, difficult transition that the world has to go through to get off fossil fuels.
Yeah, I might take you on a little tangent here,
sure.
But I have noticed throughout the years that when some families are really struggling, their first action is to put food on the table, right? And of course, to put gas into their car to be able to go to work, right? And then there's steps that they need to do to be able to survive. Even here, I think even locally, some people are really struggling. And I have noticed with those people, their first thinking is not necessarily like the planet and saving the planet, because they're trying to save themselves. And educating, there's a big educational component to this, but also making sure people have the minimum that is needed. I notice then after they want to contribute, they want to do, they want to grow, and they want to do better. And I have noticed this with different. I'm in the medical field, also in the dental field, and right now with the new dental government plan, we have noticed some people that haven't seen a dentist in a long time, and their condition is critical. So I think just there, like taking people out of pains and bringing them and educating them and be able to do certain things, all these little details together makes a difference also. And so is it something that you sometime, have you ever heard about different level of poverty? Sometimes it's really hard to actually like get them to be sensitive to these type of issues because they're struggling really deeply at other level at that moment.
Yeah, I really have a lot of respect for that dynamic, because I think, of course, it comes first to get your basic needs met. I've had the pleasure over the past 10 years of meeting many people in Coquitlam and Tri-Cities. You know, I've probably talked to well over 10,000 people about climate
I think you
change.
ran.
I ran for city council.
For city council, yes. So that, I'm sure, knocking on doors, you talked to a lot of people. Yes.
Well, and I was knocking on doors about climate change before I ran for city council, and out at farmers markets and parks. I would say that yes, I know that's a dynamic. I know it. I've talked to people about it, especially people who are poverty activists. But I wouldn't also say that my experience is that people who are struggling economically are not concerned about climate change. And
I wouldn't say that either. No,
I would say and I've been surprised by just how widespread, if you think of any sort of classification of people, like are they immigrants, or are they young, are they old, are they white collar, blue collar, however, it's pretty well distributed that there's a lot of people that are concerned about climate change.
And more and more and more. And I think the youth, you probably works a lot with youth, because I feel the youth are really concerned about climate change, and they're feeling then they almost have to kind of clean up other people's mess. You probably hear about that a lot.
Yes,
right? From the youth population.
I think over the past 5 years, youth have become cynical. I think that they have, over the time of COVID and new economic struggles, and I think that they're becoming cynical. They were, there was a huge youth movement, and I feel like they're not as much ready to go out and be the leaders and put themselves on the line. Maybe the next generation of youth. But the millennials I think that they've decided to put bread on the table and establish themselves.
And it is difficult with housing.
Yes.
It is a big problem. Yeah, I know it's hard for the youth to see, like, is this a place for me? Is there a future here? And then, interesting. So now, you sometimes need volunteers? Do you work with volunteers? How that works?
Yeah, so we do have a volunteer team that's always changing, always taking on new members, and the volunteering. We have a monthly team meeting, and then we do public outreach. We also interface with government quite a bit too. So we meet with elected officials, government staffers, just to talk about climate policy and stuff. We do public outreach on social media, and really the goal, like the only way the climate movement has ever worked, because is that whoever's there to help gets to do whatever part of that they are willing and capable of doing. So the bar's pretty low, and I've some of the greatest volunteers I've had have been high school students, like you said, youth. So many times a high school student has just taken over, and I'm the longest term volunteer, but I don't want to say like I'm the main worker, main driver, main leader. Like there have been a lot of great people over the years, but with high school students, they go away to university, and we have to find someone new to do all that work too. Yeah.
Amazing. So who's running the Alliance right now?
So the regional, like Force of Nature is a regional organization. We have a president, his name's Sunil Singhal, and we have a board. I'm not on the board this year, finally.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. And we have active teams in North Shore, Burnaby, Surrey, and Vancouver. And so, yeah, we're kind of light on the regional organizing, but we have to do, like that's how we're registered as a society. So all of our kind of legal and financial stuff runs through the board and things like that. Yeah.
So tell me, in 2025, what's planned for the Tri-Cities? Is there any town hall coming up? What's happening?
Well, we just finished the town hall on climate and environment for the federal election. We are still working on the Zero Carbon Step Code campaign, although the city of Coquitlam has moved along a little bit. We might try working on Port Coquitlam Zero Carbon Step Code. We might try a different campaign in Coquitlam. I know there is a fair bit of appetite among our supporters to ask Coquitlam to join the Sue Big Oil campaign.
Okay.
Sue Big Oil campaign, we helped bring that to Port Moody City Council, and they voted to join the Sue Big Oil campaign. And what that campaign is a class action lawsuit. When a city joins it, they dedicate $1 per citizen to the lawsuit. So Coquitlam, with our number of residents, somewhere over 150,000, I think, we would dedicate somewhere over $150,000 towards a lawsuit against oil companies. And the basis of the lawsuit would be to recover damages that the city has incurred, the money that we've had to spend because of climate change. This is a class action lawsuit in BC. The BC courts have the jurisdiction to award damages from international oil companies. And we need one more big city to join. Could be Surrey, could be Coquitlam. I guess it could be Prince George or Kelowna or something. And then the first steps in court will start happening. So that would be, a win in Coquitlam would be finishing off what we need to do for the first stage of that campaign.
So how many cities is needed right now?
I think it's like the number of citizens and the number of cities. So Burnaby has joined, Vancouver's joined, I think.
Which is pretty big.
Yep. And I think a couple other in the Lower Mainland. So it just requires one more big city.
And then this is going on. Okay. I did hear about it, but I didn't know exactly the backstory. Or is there any more to add on this? Like, why is that? Who decided to go ahead with this lawsuit?
Well,
which is collective, right?
Yeah. So it is like Force of Nature does local organizing in Tri-Cities, but this isn't our campaign. But there are a number of our supporters who want us to help this campaign happen in Coquitlam. There's an organization called West Coast Environmental Law that does legal cases about the environment, and so they're sort of running this campaign, Sue Big Oil.
So, if that goes forward, like the impact here on the Tri-Cities would be significant.
It would be significant maybe for our children or our children's children.
Okay.
I don't know what the timeline on a lawsuit like this would be.
Because it can sound complicated for people that are listening to us right now, right? It's not like that easy to understand, I feel.
Yeah, I think the significance for Coquitlam would be a couple things. One is that potentially Coquitlam could recover some money from oil companies for costs incurred by climate change, which are part of our having a climate plan is measuring those costs. The city of Port Moody already has a climate plan and is already measuring the cost of climate change. And I can give you one example. Is a multi-million-dollar boardwalk was washed away down in around Rocky Point Park by an abnormally high tide, which has been attributed to climate change.
When was that?
It was about 3 to 5 years. 3 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
But it was in the news, of course. If I were to speculate on how that would relate to this lawsuit, like, the experts could go to court and say, this is why we think climate change caused this boardwalk to be washed away, and why we think oil companies should pay for the cost of replacing that boardwalk. And it's not just boardwalks. I mean, when we had a heat dome here a couple of years ago, people died in their apartments. Many seniors, people who didn't have air conditioning.
It's too hot.
Yeah, it was too hot. And Coquitlam had I can't remember, there's a report from the coroner, and I was shocked at the large number of people that died in that heat wave. And I remember how it made me feel very unwell too, and my health is pretty good, so.
I know we're lucky if you have air conditioning when it's too hot, right? Or if you're by a lake, you can go cool yourself down. But if you're senior and you can't really get outside and you don't have a family, then yeah, it's very tragic. And more we see those heat dome. Like, I feel now we see like one every summer in the last few summers. I feel this is becoming a problem. And I remember when I moved to British Columbia, which is around late 1997, I remember saying to my family in Quebec, the summer's not even hot here.
Right.
Like it's hot during the day, but then that's it. And now it's much difference.
Yes.
A big difference from 1997 till now. The summer are hot now. The evenings are hot. And I remember I was even telling them, I'm not even wearing my summer dresses. Like, of course, I was playing volleyball at Kitsilano, but that was it, like, and it's on the beach. But yeah, I felt it was a huge difference. And now, like, it is hot. It is hot, and it's going to get hotter and hotter.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, people don't realize, or maybe they've heard there's a lot of misinformation out there. It is going to continue to get worse. And even if we reduce our emissions to zero right now, that's not going to stop climate change from still making more progress a little bit. Or if we reduce our emissions by 50%, the world's still going to keep getting hotter.
Why do you say that? Because it's not only carbon.
Yeah, and I mean, also eventually the carbon will get reabsorbed by the biosphere, by forests or wetlands or whatever. And the methane, for example, which is much worse than carbon dioxide, eventually it breaks down into carbon dioxide and things like that. So it's not like right away that you reduce emissions and that makes it cooler. It's like you have to reduce emissions to zero and then wait a bit and then it'll get cooler again. But right now, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting cooler for a while. We're just going to keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And as much as oil companies, we actually showed a video at the library that I watched. I think it was about Mobil or Exxon, someone down in the Gulf, and they had a whole science department dedicated to climate change. They weren't even trying to do anything bad. They were just trying to do science back in the 1970s or something. And when at some point the board, the upper management said, let's find out what the results are. And they found out that it was going to cause such harm and was causing such harm to the climate. They said, oh, okay. And they started a whole new project to create misinformation. Like, this is why oil companies need to be sued, because they specifically started creating the misinformation that so many people now hear about, that, oh, this is part of a natural cycle, or we can't do anything about it, or all those kind of things. And it happens locally. Like, we have a local in British Columbia subsidiary it's a multinational corporation, Fortis. Fortis BC is a subsidiary, and they are trying to influence local policy as well. For example, when cities are looking into how to create building policy for large buildings like skyscrapers, the tall buildings we're building in the city center, they go to a particular organization called Urban Development Institute, I think it's called, UDI. So if you look on Urban Development Institute's website, they've received funding from Fortis. And I don't think that funding comes without some kind of influence on what they're going to be telling cities. Urban Development Institute is against zero carbon step code, for example. And probably because they're friends with friends with Fortis, So, I think that's one of the, you asked me earlier about challenges. I think that's the other challenge, is that there's a lot of money creating misinformation about climate change and convincing people that it doesn't matter, or, ludicrous things like it's not masculine to be concerned about the environment. That's one lately too. Like,
oh wow,
people don't.
It's a lady. It's a woman thing.
Yeah, it's
What does that mean?
It's toxic masculinity. Like in order to be a man, you have to be a tough guy. You have to drive a big car, have big muscles. You can't recycle. You can't care about the environment and all these things. Where does that idea come? I can only imagine that idea is partly funded by fossil fuel money. And that's part of how it works. So those are the things we're up against for sure.
So I'm sure your ears was probably like burning when you could hear the President of the United States saying that climate changes is not even a thing.
Yeah, I'm not so surprised, I think.
Are we? With everything else, right?
Yeah, it's hard to evaluate governments. If you think about, we just had a Trudeau government, right? Well, they had a carbon tax. They had programs to transition people to low carbon. At the end of it, whatever you have to complain about the government, that was good. Those were good things. I think similar with the Biden government in the US, they had a bunch of good climate stuff too. And then you're right, Donald Trump, part of his program is to start burning coal, start pumping more gas, and get rid of the climate, the transition stuff. So it's a big political battle.
Yeah, because I'm thinking there's some green activists in the United States, and I'm sure when they hear things like drill baby drill, right?
Yeah.
They're probably also like manifesting or knocking on doors and doing some noise down there. Are you aware of any of those organizations? Do you guys talk with each other or?
I haven't really spent much time talking to American climate activists. There is a group that I worked with for a little while in Coquitlam from the Kootenays, and they brought up a climate activist who had some expertise in door knocking, talking to people from, where was she? She was from somewhere in the Midwest. And she actually stayed in my house for a while
she came here to educate people in the Tri-Cities about what's happening and probably an impact also here on the Tri-Cities to help us.
Well, I think she was doing training for people locally. And so
for local
climate activists.
Climate activists. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Oh yeah, great.
But I didn't hear too much about what's going on down there. I know that I know it's a big struggle. I know like California's had some really strong climate policy, but it's not so. And the United States has also felt very severe impacts from climate change. California has had wildfires and it's taken out their grid. People in California in some parts, like the mountains and stuff, they can't get house insurance anymore because the wildfire risk is too high.
Not offer anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about wildfire, just here in their neighborhood, right? 2 years ago, we had
Minnesota.
Thank you. Which is right here. When I was driving across, I could see the fire, and my home is here. And then it's like, oh my God, this is my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And that could be like a little bit like what happened in California. I got nervous with it. I thought this is way too close from home. And like you say, things are getting hotter. We have to talk about it. We're on a green belt here, like the forest is there. And that's something I think we have to keep talking about and being aware of. Things are changing. And I do find the summers are getting hotter. Every summer, I feel the fire starts a bit earlier. Even like right now, we're in May, right? And I'm hearing Prince George is on fire right now. There's some areas. So it's already started. So we have to talk about this. And of course, like wind comes and things happen, especially in the Okanagan, right?
Yes.
But then we suffer from this here also because of the smoke that comes across. And a lot of people here in the Tri-Cities locally can go outside for any respiratory like problem. And I think even if it's not here close to us, here locally, we are affected, especially when the smoke comes here and you can go outside. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ben. Is there anything we need to cover or talk about that we haven't talked today?
I don't think so. I think that's good. If people are interested in getting involved, you can look up Force of Nature Alliance on the internet. We should be the first link. There's a number of articles about things we've done, and there's a volunteer link if you want to get in touch. Fill it out, and you'll be able to reach me or another volunteer organizer. And we'd love to have you help us out.
And maybe learn more. Do you, I guess there's always a teaching component to everyone that is interested.
Yeah, or if you have something to teach us, bring your ideas. Excellent.
Well, I like that. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And I did learn a few things, so I'm sure some people that are listening to us today, you learned something definitely from Benjamin Perry, from the Tri-Cities Force of Nature Alliance. So thank you so much for joining us today from Tri-Cities Community Television and myself, Genevieve Kyle Lefebvre. Have a good evening.